Today I'm taking an average toy and making it look out of this world. Something that's been on my to-do list for far too long is to make a decent replica of Han Solo's DL-44 blaster. Everyone's aware of this Ruby's toy replica, but only recently did I find this toy that will help me realise my dream. It's certainly not perfect, but it's an inexpensive way to give this project a go. To complete this project, I'm going to use a bit of 3D printing and a bit of woodworking to create all the little add-ons that we need to make this a DL-44 blaster. The DL-44 prop in the Star Wars movies didn't have screw holes though, so they are the first thing I need to address. But before filling the holes, I want to add some weight to this prop. Despite the number of FDM and resin 3D printed parts I'm adding to this prop, they don't quite give the prop the sense of weight that I'm looking for. So I'm going to take it apart and see if I can fit some extra mass inside this toy. I found some nice weighty brass parts in my miscellaneous parts bin, but they were just slightly too thick to allow the frame to fit back together. So in the end I went with a small shaft of steel and a few stainless steel nuts. These were epoxied in place. The two halves of the frame were given a good sand to promote paint adhesion, and then the halves were primed. All the internal parts could then be refitted, the two halves of the frame reassembled, and those pesky, inaccurate holes dealt with. Behind the scenes, I'd been doing a lot of 3D printing. Resin, FDM, you name it. I wanted to use as many high quality resin parts as I could for this build, mainly to minimise the amount of sanding I'd have to endure, but also the resin parts are a lot higher fidelity. So with these parts manufactured and the putty dry on the frame, it's time to get sanding. The biggest regret I have in this project is the failure to conduct proper preparation. When I had the two halves of the frame separate, the one critical thing I failed to do was install a fastener from the inside facing out to act as threaded rod for the scope rail to attach to. Instead, I'll have to resort to epoxying some thread into the frame from the outside, which won't be as strong or as neat. But with the sanding behind us and the scope rail failure addressed, we can move on to painting. All the parts of the blaster get a coat of satin black paint, and while that dries, I'm going to work on the grip panels. So now with everything made, and everything sanded, everything painted, it's time for the best part, putting it all together. By this point, I'm getting pretty excited. It's starting to look like a thing, and it's starting to look good. Let's keep going. Because the toy Mauser wasn't a one-to-one replica, I had to modify a lot of the 3D print files to get them to work with this base model. While those 3D model files are excellent in terms of quality, they're a bit lacking in the detail, so I've added a few extra embellishments here and there in an attempt to up the level of realism where I can. These were simple but I think critical additions to the model. For example, fitting these slotted screws to the scope rings to make it look more like a real scope. And I also tapped the compensator mount with a thread so I could fit a proper fastener here too, rather than just a pin. I replaced the molded in fastener head feature of the toy Mauser with a fastener here too. So what do you guys reckon? Do you think that was a successful conversion? I think it was. I hope you enjoyed this video and that inspired you to get making too. If it did, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of content in the future. Thanks for watching. Bye.